Group 6 will be presenting unit testing. We will be discussing what unit testing is, what the advantages and disadvantages are of unit testing, and how effective unit testing can be. A unit test is a piece of code, usually a method, that invokes another piece of code and checks the correctness of some assumptions afterward. If the assumptions turn out to be wrong, then the unit test has failed. A unit test is going to be testing a unit of work, otherwise known as a method or function. Unit testing is not a new concept in software development. It's been floating around since the early days of programming in the 1970s, and it proves itself time and time again as one of the best ways a developer can improve code quality while giving a deeper understanding of the functional requirements of a class or method. A couple of the reasons why unit testing is used include how thorough unit testing can be when done properly, and how efficient, fast, and repeatable unit testing can be, meaning multiple development teams or developers can repeat the same unit tests. So let's go over an example of a unit test. Assume you have a simple parser class, as shown on the left, that you'd like to test. It has a method named parseInSum that takes in a string of 0 or more comma-separated numbers. If there are no numbers, it returns 0. If there's a single number, it returns that number as an integer. If there are multiple numbers, it adds them all up and returns the sum. Although right now, for the purpose of this, the code isn't complete. So on the right, as you can see, we can create a simple console application project that has a reference to the assembly containing this class on the left, and you can write a simple parser test method as shown in the following listing. The test method invokes the production class, the class to be tested, and then checks the returned value. If it's not what's expected, then the test method writes to the console. Alternatively, if it also catches any exception, then it then writes the exception to the console as well.
There are a lot of advantages in using unit testing. One of the biggest ones is that unit testing focuses on modularity. Modularity allows testers to test different pieces of an application without needing to worry about any of the other areas being completed or perfected. This also allows these testers to create tests and to run tests that are focused on a singular part of the program, rather than needing to worry about interactions that would happen between other pieces. This form of testing also allows developers and testers to get a better understanding about how each part of a program works. Through this testing, developers can refine code and get it to run very optimally in each specific area. And when unit testing is done well, it decreases the amount of bugs and other issues that tend to appear when adding features or when rewriting code. And if done exceptionally well, unit testing also saves developers quite a lot of time throughout the entire development process.
I will be talking about the cons of unit testing. The first one I want to start off with is that it is time consuming. Then the reason it's time consuming is that it's more than just writing tests. When a developer goes to do tests, they have to experiment the code, research what they need to be testing, and then once those steps are done, writing the test. But even more goes into that. I have here on the left, we have a life cycle. If we're trying to automate tests, which is the point of unit tests, we have to make a decision of what to automate, what tools we want to use, how that process is automated. And once that's done, we have to review and make sure that it actually properly tested. And that can become increasingly more complex when we start diving into legacy code. Now, legacy code, I provide a definition, is code that's written by others or under previous language of architecture, methodology, or framework that pertains to the current project. Basically, any code that's not written by you is a form of legacy code. And as most of us know as developers, when we start working with legacy code, with code made by others, we need to understand the logic that went into it. What was the person thinking? Why did they do certain things? And we hope that it's easy and very intuitive to pick up, but sometimes it might not be. And that's why the obstacles end up becoming the complexity. Because first we need to figure out, okay, where do we want to start this test? Where do we want to end this test? And then we have to look at the structure of the code. Okay, how is the code structured? Okay, how is it receiving this information, for example, from an API? And that adds to the complexity. Next, there are also other negatives too as well. Unit tests are not a one and done deal. They often require maintenance. And if there are any requirement changes, those tests have to reflect those changes in requirements. The other thing is that one of the specific scenarios for which unit tests are not good for are UI and GUI elements. For those, you actually just want to end up testing the business logic. And the other thing as well is, just as with any other test, it does not catch all the errors. The tests are designed to just catch what we are looking for. And because of the fact that it's only testing components, it also means that it won't catch tests that other designs are for. And this is an example would be integration testing, which is designed to catch in the integration of different systems. Unit tests will not pick up on those tests.
Now let's go over effectiveness. When would someone use unit testing? Unit testing is great to use when working alone or in a team. It is effective at breaking apart code and testing individual parts in order to spot out bugs effectively before the project gets too large. Many times when unit testing is needed, it is used to speed up the time taken in order to check for bugs or other errors that may occur in certain parts of the program. Now, how does unit testing increase efficiency? Unit testing can increase efficiency through a number of different ways. Some of them are as follows. Unit testing speeds up error testing by being embedded in the code. Unit testing can be run by anyone writing or editing the program. Unit testing is automatic and easy to write, so test creation time is lowered, increasing work efficiency. And finally, unit testing is reusable, making it resource efficient and cost efficient.
In conclusion, we have talked about a lot of things when it comes to unit testing. Specifically, what a unit test is, why we even use unit testing, some of the advantages of it, some of the disadvantages, and the effectiveness. How does unit testing make us efficient in the long run? Some of the things that have stuck out to me is that individually or as a team, these unit tests can be built and can be ran and used. These tests can run quicker than we can, often catching bugs that maybe we didn't even catch or we didn't look to see, or it just saves us a lot of hassle from having to read through our code one line at a time, checking every single variable, although I'm sure we'll still have a fair share of that. Some of the disadvantages are that it's time consuming. Like Jeremiah said, it's more than just writing tests. It also requires a lot of maintenance, a lot of upkeep. If you're adding code, changing code, updating code, removing code, anything of that nature, that will affect unit tests in some way, shape, or another, and so you'll have to keep that updated as well. And unfortunately, it doesn't catch every single error that's out there. And so that is our presentation. Here are our works cited. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. You guys have a great evening.